think this film was something I felt passionate about, if I'm honest, because it's such a Welsh story and we get such few opportunities to tell a Welsh story, and especially in the cinema. I just wanted to grasp it and I felt, listen, I never knew Richard Burton. I've got no sort of special access to his life, but I feel I do know the place from which he came. I do know the world that created him. I feel very close to the Valleys. I went to school in the Valleys. I speak Welsh. He started life as a Welsh speaker. So I felt that this was a story that I wanted to curate.
I'm thrilled about this movie. I think it is wonderful. I think this is a part of Dad's life that people do not know about. They know very little about, and it's what made him.
It's taken quite a long time, this one. I think I had the idea, I was looking back at my documents, it has been 10 years really since I had the idea. I phoned Tom, I said, do you want to write this thing together? I think we could write it well together. I'd read Tom's book, Outlands, and then I met Ed Telfany and Hay on Wye, which was exactly 10 years ago. So it has taken a while, as a lot of films do, this one particularly long. That said, I really feel that this is the right time to make this film. The stars have aligned. We've got Richard Burton's centenary coming next year, but particularly having Toby Jones and having Harry Lawty playing Richard. It now feels like no one else could ever have played those roles. So it was worth waiting for Harry to go from being a 10-year-old probably, or no, a 15-year-old to now here, because he is inhabiting the role of Richard in the most incredible way, you know, from the young Richard to the more fully formed Richard.
Thank you so much for coming.
And I just want to say, he would.
You made me cry.
No. I mean, he would love it. I mean, he would just be like, that's it. You know, so I'm just saying
that means the world. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
At some point in the process, you claim some ownership over the character, and he becomes your Richard, if you like. But then you meet Kate and you meet the family, and suddenly I'm struck with this thing of like, oh, Richard doesn't belong to me at all. Like, he belongs to you, and there's no doubt in that, you know. But thankfully, everyone who's visited has been so generous of spirit and so giving and just profoundly supportive with Richard and his memory, and they're really encouraging of what we're doing here, and they support our efforts, I suppose, and they know that we're trying to tell a story that celebrates him and his sort of very special, unique, and wonderful relationship with Philip. And honestly, I genuinely can't articulate what that means. I think when you've put so much work in, and you know, I care about this project so deeply, more than I've ever cared about any work I've done, I think. And to have that kind of approval and that kind of affirmation honestly means the world.
And you know, to have such an extraordinary actor playing Phil, and he's sitting right here, Toby Jones, you know, we were so thrilled. The family was so thrilled. And honestly, the minute I started to hear who was in the film, I just said it's in great hands.
One of the great pleasures of this job has been acquainting myself with Wales, which I wasn't totally unfamiliar with, but I know, if you like, holiday Wales in Pembrokeshire, or I know the Beacons a bit, and I've walked there a bit, but visiting these urban centres, particularly Port Talbot, which I'd never been to, I just passed through it, and you can feel the presence or the absence of industry and the scale that was, and I found it really useful. But it's just sort of also a fringe benefit of my job, is you get to visit these very beautiful places, and they're struggling along. They're struggling along, but they're still teeming with life.
This film is about a couple of things, but the thing that I find really interesting about this film is a sort of historical conundrum or contradiction, if you like. Because this film talks about a world where to be Welsh, Welsh-speaking Welsh, meant that you were an outsider, and that to join the club of acting and the arts, you had to abandon who you were and learn to be somebody else. And Mr. Burton is the person who teaches Richard, if you like, in one way, knocks the Welsh out of him to become Richard Burton. And yet, the paradox of it is that if you ask anybody who Richard Burton is, they'll tell you he's a Welsh actor. So the alchemy of Richard Burton is this sort of contradiction between trying to erase who he was, but not completely succeeding in erasing who he was, and becoming something other, which is half of who he was and half of somebody else.
20 years ago, when I first went to London, I had to really dampen, my Welsh accent. I had to pull it back. Because when you do meetings with different broadcasters and different casting directors and producers, they go like, oh, can I hear a little lilt there? And because they knew you had an accent, you had to work harder for them to feel like you were capable of doing a different accent. So there was even myself, I had to have a different persona when I first started acting in London. I had to take away this, an iron boy from Lewisham, and I bet, how you doing? Like, when I go back home and I have a pint with my dad, that's how we sound like, But when I went to London, I had to bring that back slightly, and I had to place it in a place where it's not losing who you are, it's just that that's the game and that's the world that you're in. So you have to translate that, and change it, and that's exactly what Burton had to do, But the wonderful thing about Burton was because he has such an incredible voice, he knew how to tap into that and then bring out that beautiful melody that the Welsh have. I am going to be biased because I think it's wonderful, and I don't think we explore it enough. And hopefully we get to see more of that.
I completely relate to that, and I know a lot of my Welsh actor friends also relate to that when you first start out, I remember when I first started, the amount of times I get emails through for auditions and it would say any regional accent, but in brackets it would often say apart from Welsh. And I don't know whether there's just this connection with the Welsh, well, originally there was this connection with the Welsh accent that, it was always comedic, or that they felt that people couldn't play intelligent actors if they sounded Welsh and working class. But I definitely think that has changed. But it's also, I'd say for me, the more I've done, the more established I've become, the more I've been allowed to use my own voice.
What's great about making this film in this way here is that we're not away in some studio with no connection to it. We did the scenes in Pontrhydyfen. We did this, the pub scenes near, in a nearby valley, but we did the scene walking across the viaduct on that viaduct, matching a photograph that is been blown up and is in the cafe that used to be a chapel just the other side of the viaduct. And I went in there first and I saw this, and and so there's a real connection, and you look around the village of Pontrhydyfen that I could see from the viaduct and could feel that sense of belonging. I mean, my valley is 2 valleys over the Swansea Valley, and I grew up in Morriston, and my family from Clydach. I went to school in Ystafer. This is really not far from Pontrhydyfen. It's just literally over a couple of hills, And I know these people. I know this guy, not literally, obviously, but I know guys like this, and I know families like this, and I know that culture.
I think everybody instinctively tells stories about the people and places that they know. And for us, the team at Seven Screen, we have a real passion for the patch that we live on, the little part of the globe that we inhabit, which is Wales, and telling stories that reflect the people and place, I think is really important. If we don't tell our stories, who the hell is going to tell them?
Do you know what? The production on this, and I know when you hear people say things like, oh yeah, on Coronation Day, oh, we're all like a family. It's one of the nicest production teams I've ever worked with, because everyone's the same. I think when you do smaller jobs, you've got more heart in it because everyone's up against it, because you haven't got money to throw at things and fix things. So each department struggles with a low budget, but I think it gives you the best creativity. And because you're all in the same boat, you all help each other out.
In my last week, there's a very strong sense of everyone having really enjoyed being so hands-on with it, whether that's working with the writers from my point of view, or whether it's people learning on the job as runners.
It's an adventure. And the bit that always reminds me is an adventure is when I'm up a hill. And that is very, very like being a kid again, because actually, let's try and make this story on top of a hill in Wales. And that always feels like, sometimes a ridiculous proposition because of the weather and because of getting up there. And then when you're there in costume, when the actors are in costume and you're acting something out, there's something quintessentially free and childlike about that because it's just ridiculous. It's great, and I there's always a part of me that wants that to feel like fun for everybody because I think it's like, let's go up the hill and tell a story, you know.